All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to get going here. It is Monday, March 20th, a little after 6 p.m., and we are here to consider the preliminary budget adoption. First order of business, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. Next, we have the roll call, if you would, Susan.
Council President McEntee.
Here.
Council Vice President Marin.
Here.
Councilwoman Bergner.
Here.
Councilwoman Alley.
Here.
Councilwoman Rose.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. All right, that's going to bring us to item 3, new business. A is a resolution adopting the fiscal year 23-24 Town Council preliminary budget. But before we take that up, we're going to get a presentation from town staff, so I'm going to hand it over to Town Manager Jim Manning.
Thank you, Council President. Before you and on the screen, you will see a presentation that we'll keep as brief as possible because much of it has already been presented to you, except for the last 2 pages. But it's worth going over the highlights of what was presented to you in the initial budget hearings. For those that missed it, that are watching or in the crowd this afternoon. So let's go to page 3. And I'll just go over the summary of the proposed changes for the fiscal year 23-24 and explain to you why there are some changes and why the increase occurred. So you'll notice that in the first bullet point, 1.63% of the proposed tax levy increase was over fiscal year 22-23. 1.10% of the proposed tax rate increase is the tax rate to $11.07 from $10.95. When we were going through the budget with all the directors, there were about $2.5 million in proposed increases. We cut those substantially by $918,000 rounding up by the wants versus needs and the prioritization of what the directors needed. And we cut it down quite a bit. Of the $1.5 million that was left as an increase from last year, approximately 2/3 of that was just from the police budget. We negotiated a very important long-term solution to an issue that was presented, over time for the police department, like any police department. Our goal was, there was about $600,000 in overtime per year because of the collective bargaining agreement with minimum manning on any given year, $500,000 to $600,000. Our goal was to reduce that at a minimum by 1/3 and maybe up to a half, with the chief really watching this overtime budget. And we were able to do that by a creative shift that was worked out called the Panama schedule, which did increase cost, but in the long term should decrease all the overtime, and therefore I think this is the best way to proceed. It would be a long-term solution to an issue with overtime. So there was So if you look at bullet point 3, there was $917,000 decrease in this budget review process by all the directors. We also had additional reductions that there was $100,000 in bullet point 4. So we budgeted initially 6% for the healthcare rates that were going up. Then we raised them, projected it because it was going to be higher, and it went out to 9.1. But it even went higher than that, so it's 9.4. So we had to cut an additional, $100,000 from it, which added $100,000 cost to our budget. Before I turn it over to our Finance Director, Brian Sylvia, I just want to make a couple of general statements. 95% of our $30 million budget is fixed costs. There's very little discretionary funding in the town's budget. We have to do everything with that: roads, water, bridges, personnel, police, everything, EMS. This, as I stated, two-thirds of the increase was because of the police department collective bargaining agreement that came up in the 3-year contract that we all signed and went before the council. There's no waste in this budget. It's a very lean budget. And every dollar was scrutinized and prioritized. I'm a taxpayer in this town as well. And I assure the taxpayers of this town, our residents, that every dollar was looked at and we kept it as low as we possibly could. And I think this budget is successful because of inflation was out of control this year for so many reasons, but we were able to keep it at an affordable rate. So I'll turn over to Brian Sylvia to go through these slides very quickly, and then just go over the last two a little more detail because those are the ones that changed from the last time.
Thank you, Jim. Before you is a summary of the budget drivers for the proposed fiscal year 23-24 budget. Again, as Jim mentioned, we've gone through this previously, so I'm going to go fairly quickly through this, but if there's any questions, certainly I'll entertain them. So in terms of the expense side and the budget drivers, the additions, we had roughly 10 items that accounted for an increase of $1.8 million. Then we had some reductions in terms of the EMS positions that were not going to be utilized this year, and the outside agencies that were funded through ARPA, bringing the total down to $1.4 million. So that represents 95% of the total increase of the town budget, which was 1.55. So this page is really just illustrating where our drivers are in terms of the budget increase this year. On the next page, again, much of the information that's presented here we've talked about, and it's actually even been in these slides already, the 1.07 increase for the schools. That is, again, just related to state aid. The only thing I would note that wasn't on a prior slide, the local appropriation to schools is level funded at $55,994,773. Here's a summary of expenditures. This is one thing to note on this slide. The budget in this town really gets sliced and diced many different ways. So just to clarify here, this is all funds. So this is the general fund, this is our special revenue funds, and our enterprise funds. So all funds budgeted. You have proposed amount of $104,997,389. And similarly, on the revenue side, again, here's a breakdown for revenue for all funds, again, at $104,997,389. And here's a distribution of our property taxes. So property taxes will come in at about $75 million, and this is a breakdown of where the property taxes will be going. Obviously, the largest piece is the school department at just under $56 million. Town budget at almost $17.5 million, and then some of the outside funds, smaller amounts, which again we'll detail later, so I'll kind of go faster through here. Here's a breakdown of our tax levy rate allocation for the proposed current year, the prior year, and then 10 years from that. Generally speaking, it's always in the 24 to 25, 26% range for the town side, and 73 to 76% on the school side. That's a typical breakdown. So that's how it is breaking down this year. For the proposed 24 year, you're seeing a 25.99% for the town and 74.01% for the school in terms of the rate allocation of the 1107. Excuse me. This is a breakdown of the projected tax roll for the fiscal year 23-24 year. You're seeing a 0.53% increase on assessed values. That is an increase of $36,285,060, which will raise our assessed values to $6,897,654,550. Now, this is just related to town budget. So this is town budget, the general fund. This is proposed at $30,808,333. And this is, again, groupings of the various there are various subgroupings here. We didn't break it out by department here, but we've done that previously. And obviously, again, if anybody has any questions, we can certainly answer that. Here's a breakdown of the school department. On the top is the expense breakdown, where you'll see salary and benefits at $45,600,000 for the school department, and then services, commodities, and capital making up the balance at $17 million. Total budget at $62,635,000, an increase of $660,000, excuse me. Again, that is going to be related to an increase predominantly of education aid, and the funding for the school department is on the bottom of the page, where, again, you'll see the level fund from the town and an increase from state aid, which is the largest one, and also Medicare. Here's the special revenue funds. That is made up of Peacedale Office Building, the Senior Center Fund, Neighborhood Guild Fund, and the Rec Center. Those come in at a total budget of $2,418,847. Next is the enterprise funds, which is made up of the water fund, wastewater fund, and the solid waste fund. Those total for a proposed budget in FY '24 of $7,219,144. And finally, the other fund transfers. These are transfers that come from the general fund to fund other operations, the largest being the school department at the $55,994,000. But also there are funds going to support senior services, excuse me, the rec center, debt service fund, wastewater, and the tax transfer. Actually, that's the tax transfer is zero. That is coming in for a total of, $58,146,000. I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong line. $58,219,707. On this slide is the fund balance. I did have a note on this one. So the fund balance use, now, what I should note here, the fund balance use of $1,043,000 that is noted up above, that is just the use of unassigned fund balance for the general fund. The town is actually using a total of $1,632,329 of fund balance between various funds, as the school department is using $270,000, senior services $5,000, guild $14,000, et cetera, debt service $150,000. But the town is actually using $1.6 million. That $1,043,000 is just general fund. And again, at the bottom of the page, you'll see our fund balance as of the 2022 audited financials at $15,639,000. That represents 17.86% of our operating budget for that year, which is right in line with our policy on the books, and right in line with the GFOA recommended amount, which is 2% of our revenues for the year, which would come out to about 16.7. So we're right above, slightly above that. And here, as Jim mentioned, here are some proposed changes from what was presented to the council previously. We did not account for, in the budget that was presented to the council prior, the expenses related to the presidential primary. Hope I'm saying that right?
Yeah, presidential
Yes.
preference primary.
Sorry, I knew there was something I was missing. Thank you. Presidential preference primary. So we had to add in the expenses for the presidential preference primary. And then we also within this is the state library endowment aid was accounted for within the endowment aid account and also the state library aid account. So that $20,006 was accounted for twice. So we are backing that out. And how we are doing this is, so we have to basically find $36,000 to account for these changes. And the tax rate, when it came in at 1107, excuse me. So the tax rate, it takes $67,000 to move between 1 cent to another. And where we fell at 1107, we were pretty much in the middle of that. So at 1107, we had about 30,000 to play with. So 30,000 of that 36,000 is accounted for by just having a little extra basically in the rate. You never hit a rate right on, because so that's 30,000 of the 36,000, and the final 6,000. Our collection rate has always had been 98.7%. To get to the final 6,000, we went to 98.71. So that is how we achieved the putting those two items back into the budget. And this is a breakdown of that right here. So again, you'll see the levy increase of the 1.63. And on the bottom portion of the page, you'll see the actual proposed budgetary tax revenue at the 75,175. So that's going to account for the additions of that 36,000, and that's via using the full amount available at the 1107 and raising the collection rate from 98.7 to 98.71. And that is all.
All right, thank you, Brian. Any questions from members right now? All right, I'll start with one here. So, Jim, I know this budget contemplates an allocation to the police department for a grant writer of $12,000. I want to ask you, does it make more sense to allocate more monies for a grant writer that can do things for all of the town as opposed to specifically for the police department?
That's a good question. It is. And there's a lot of federal money out there right now, and a lot of municipalities are taking advantage of it, and many of them have hired grant writers. Talking to some of my colleagues, other town managers, town administrators, and mayors, when I go to the League of Cities and Towns, many of them have hired specific grant writers, not as full-time employees, but as consultants, which keeps the cost down. The average cost is anywhere from $4,800 to $5,400 per month. So I am working to budget. We're going to put an RFQ out within the next couple of weeks, looking to see if we can find a good grant writer for the town to handle public safety and municipal grants. I also inquired about the town, maybe the schools, to see if we could combine one grant writer and split the cost, which it would be more than $60,000 for sure. School grants are very complicated. The answer, I haven't been able to find a good answer yet. There isn't one type of grant writer that fits all. There's very specific type of grant writers just for schools. But the priority right now for me would be public safety and the municipal side. I'm going to give you an example. We're always trying to get grants here in town. And usually there's a match, 20%. We've applied for many grants. But there were two that came to my attention just last week that I didn't even know about. One was a $1.5 million grant specifically for the EMS building we're trying to build in Perryville. Initially, we were going to ask for $2 million, but we lowered it to 1.5 to just keep it really realistic as to, you know, what it would cost us and maybe add some additional money. We have 1.1 million budget from APRA, but we need much more than that to finish this place. So we found a grant that might fit that, and we applied for it on the 16th. There was another grant. Even though we're trying to build a multi-purpose, multi-generational room at the library, the Peacedale Library, which sees over 100 people a day, many are underserved, many are elderly. It's the perfect place to renovate and put, for school-age children to go in and study, and for elderly people to go in and access computers, portals that can help with their health care. So we applied for a $700,000 grant, also due on the 16th, both through Congressman Magazzini's office. There's no guarantee we'll get these grants, but we didn't even know about them until last week. So it just shows you when you have a good grant writer, and two more came in today. One was a $100,000 grant for, had to do with the planning department. Another one was a $500,000 grant that came in for beautifying streets. So you can see there's a lot of money out there that you would have to be on this every day to find out what they are. So it's a long answer to your short question. We need one. It would pay in dividends so much. So rather than just put it right towards public safety, let's look at and see if we can find one for the entire town.
All right, thank you, Jim. Questions on that?
Yeah. Thank you for following up. I also read your email on Friday when you explained that, so I appreciate Rory bringing it to everyone's attention. What I do really like about it is that this is a contract position and it's not an employee, so that we can, when the grants dry up, because I feel like right now there's a lot of money out there from the rescue funds, from other funds. If it takes a dip and it gets more competitive, we can adjust, we can pull back. We don't own an employee forever, and so I appreciate the way that you creatively are going to put this together. I also want to say, if we could have 5 Leos, I'll take that as well. So, one for each of us.
So that's a good point, though, that everyone should realize. Every time you put an FTE, a full-time employee in town, any government, it's not only the salary, it's 50% more for the pay, for the pension and the OPEB, healthcare. So anytime you can hire a consultant at a reasonable cost, that is the best way to go.
All right. Any other questions up there? Go ahead, Mike.
Has there been any update with respect to the state aid to the schools, the funding formula?
Not at this time, no. I haven't seen any new numbers. I don't think
we
the
still have
General
the-
Assembly has taken it up yet. I haven't heard any new numbers yet.
So just a question, this question popped into mind. We have asked for investigation into the per pupil expenditure. Have we ever gotten any sort of concrete information on what that would look like, whether it's feasible? Because the public always asks, so we must always get the answer.
We had a couple, myself and Raquel from the school department have had 2 Zooms with the state on this matter, and it's something we really do have to circle back to, and I will certainly report back. This has kind of taken precedent, but it's something we will continue on. But we have had some conversations with both the state twice on this, and we'll continue that and report back.
Right, because that fuels the desire for a referendum that we, when people don't like what the funding is, that's their recourse. And so without a definitive answer about per pupil expenditure funding, we always are backpedaling from that. So
Understood.
I know you've been busy on the budget. I know you worked a million hours. And it's great in terms of where it's headed. I just want to have that answer because people are here tonight. They might not ask, but people in the future might ask. And I'd like to be able to definitively understand it, have the community understand it, and know what their options are before they put forth a referendum.
Understood.
Thank you.
I can't speak for the state in terms of getting an answer because I need them to provide an answer to me, but we will make every effort between Raquel and I to speak to them and have an answer for you before this comes up again in April.
Thank you.
All right, I got one for you, Brian. I'm looking at this, the slide that shows, I believe, fund balance as a percentage of the total budget.
Yes.
Slide 16 here. Now, I believe our policy is to maintain a balance in the undesignated fund of 10 to 17% within that range of the total budget.
Yes.
Now, it looks like there's several years here where we're sort of beyond that. I just want to ask you, generally, is there a best practice what to do with amounts in excess that are in our undesignated fund balance?
Before he answers that, so I think that increase that you see for 2020 was a ramping up, anticipating the school bond that failed, was a ramp up of debt service. I remember that meeting 2 years ago, but I wasn't.
It sort of leads me to what I was going to go toward, which is when there is in excess of the 17%, does it make sense to put that excess in the debt service fund to sort of plan for the anticipated school project debt?
It's certainly an option. So I'm going to try to circle back to a few of the questions there. 100% correct, Councilwoman. In addition to that, one thing that helped pad the fund balance in those years was the COVID years were lean years, and that helped increase the fund balance as well. So it was both of that. In terms of how to use it, best case scenario and what rating agents would prefer to see is using it towards one-time expenses, capital items, things of that nature, which you had just mentioned, either putting it aside for debt or capital expenses of that nature, not funding your operating budget and reoccurring expenses, because this will dry up and then you'll have a structural deficit. So that is preferred. In terms of what to do with the funds, you can certainly designate some funds towards either capital or the debt service. Those are certainly within your purview, or we can leave it here. You have options there. I mean, we're not substantially over the 17%, so it's not a substantial amount of money, but that's something we could certainly, I could look into this further and get back to you on that, on some options, sure.
And if I heard you correctly, we're just under the GFOA 2%.
Just over, actually. Sorry. Yes, that's 16.7, and we're at 17.8.
16.7 is the recommended amount?
Correct.
And what, do you have any idea of how much money that translates to from where we're at? Sorry.
That's okay.
It's like 1%, a little over 1.
About 14.7. I'm using rough numbers. I remember what there's a formula. You don't take all of our operating budgets, so there's certain pieces that go into the calculation on what the percentage is. So I'm rounding, but it's approximately 15 million would be at 16.7.
So it's about 600,000.
Correct. A little north than that because I'm rounding up.
Okay.
So
All right, thank you, Brian. All right, seeing none, we're going to open this up for public comment. I just ask that whoever comes up to introduce yourself first. We're going to limit you to 3 minutes. And if I interrupt you for going over, it's only in the spirit of allowing others to come up and speak as well. But with that said, first come, first serve. And go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Hank DeMarco. I live at the end of Jerry Brown Farm Road. My wife and I are here tonight just to get some confirmation of what we hear about the plowing for next season for some private roads in South Kingstown. Our road ends at the White Gate that becomes part of the association, and for as long as I can tell, for 80, maybe 100 years, the town has plowed that road. It's very convenient to go through that gate, go down to the end, turn around, and come back out. We maintain it, we grade it, but the town has provided a great service in plowing that road. It's going to be cumbersome to have a plow turn around right at that gate and come back out. If you time going from the gate down to the end, to the circle, it's 2 minutes down and 2 minutes out with a good-sized truck like the town has. And it's a great service that makes the place very safe. We've been thinking that maybe it would be more, I don't use the right word here, it would be reasonable if we could grandfather some of these that aren't costing the town anything, because the town isn't going to save any money or reduce anything by not turning around at the end. It's probably going to cost them more to turn around at the end, at the beginning where the gate is now. We have tried in the last 2 months, since the January meeting, to find somebody that'd be willing to come. We have yet to find anybody that would take a truck and then bring it just to Jerry Brown Farm and do the main road. We do our own fire lanes and maintain it and grade it, but this is going to be problematic for us at Jerry Brown Farm. And I'm sure when you went through your decisions for the glasses and the information you had, it was a good decision to say we're not going to do this. But for some of the folks who've been around, in 80 years to 100 years doing a service seems like a long time. To change it in midstream, we might want to just think about that. So I'm pleading with you to think about this again before you send letters out saying you're not going to do it. I don't know how this impacts everybody else, but I'm just giving you our perspective and how it impacts us. And I think it's going to be a problem. And I'm not sure what it's going to save, other than it's going to cost us a lot of money to get somebody to get a truck there of highway capable, not a pickup truck, and to plow that road now and then go down to the end and turn around, it just seems problematic. So, my 2 cents.
Thank you for coming to us with this.
All right, thank you.
Okay, anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Everybody just come on up.
Oh, hi, Libby Nestor, Wakefield resident. Great budget. It was very clear. I really appreciate the time you guys have spent doing that. And I looked through it, what I saw online, even before what we saw tonight. I'm also really grateful that the council voted to advance the high school bond the last time. I'm going to actively advocate for it with my cohort of friends, and I know probably all of you would do that as well. One thing that I didn't see in the budget and that I'm having a little trouble with, was it the architect that was here kind of pitching for yeah. I remember him saying, and I went back to check on it, what I actually heard, that deferred maintenance at the other schools, including the elementary and the middle schools, would not become immediately dangerous for 5 years. It's not that long from now. And again, as I recall, the council decided to turn down that deferred maintenance addition to the bond along with its state match. So of that 25 million, I think only 11 million, I think 11 million was for programmatic stuff and not for the buildings. But I'm not great with budgets. It seemed to me to leave 14 million required to do the deferred maintenance for safety reasons. And members of the council specifically said when you voted, the repairs would be on us, that is on South Kingstown, without the state aid. So it's going to cost more than double in the future what we would pay now, or what we would raise now with that match, let alone considering increased construction costs. So I don't know if you're thinking, maybe it actually is in the budget and I just didn't see it, or maybe it's that you're thinking it might come out of the school budget in years to come. But I'm just hoping that that gets addressed somehow to let the people of the town know. You know, I have this little picture of the elementary students and the ceiling tiles falling on their heads in 5 years. I don't think that's true. I don't think you would allow these buildings to become actually dangerous, as he said. In any case, maybe there might be a grant for that as well. We got a grant writer. Thank you for sitting up there, all of you guys, and being the ones to take the tough questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
So, as I understand it, I haven't had a chance to watch the school building committee meeting on Thursday, but as I understand what was told to me is that they will put together a spending issue. We will only bond 125 for the high school, but they may identify, say, $2 million for X at this elementary school. We will only borrow the 125. The other projects would be still in that application. So if the school department said, hey, we realized savings of $1 million and we have a $2 million project, it's under that RIDE proposal. So we would be, if the project was $2 million, we could put in 1 and we would get that 15.5. So it's not as dire as you think. So I do think that I again speak for my colleagues, I don't think any of us would stomach ceiling tiles, or like we wouldn't do that. But I do think that the bonding part will be 125, but the project list could be longer. Do you see what I'm saying? So I just explain it to everyone because we also worry that if say it was $150 million in projects, people would go, what? We only approved 125. We're only bonding 125, but identifying other projects. So should they come up with money, they would qualify for the match. Does that help you? Did I explain it correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
There
You
was
did a
also-
really nice job explaining that. That was great.
It was a really complicated thing. I went slow.
There is, just to follow up, there is a 5-year window, and the chair of the school building committee is taking that into account for the Phase 2 application. So just as Deb said, we're only bonding 125, and the state's going to reimburse us a good portion of that. We're trying to keep our options open to do additional work for that. That additional 25 million is for deferred maintenance over a 10-year period overall. So it's still on our radar.
Thank you, Mike. Jim, come on up.
Jim O'Neill, Matunic. Just a couple of questions. Page 10 on the projected 23-24 property tax roll. The increase of the taxable land and buildings from 22 to fiscal year 23, we're looking about $1.8 billion there. How much of that was from the revaluation?
Repeat your question, Jim.
He's got it. Brian, you got the question.
I didn't hear it, though. That's why.
Oh, I'm sorry, you want me to repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yes. How much
Okay.
of the what?
Yeah, page 10 on the taxable property list, taxable land and buildings. You saw the $5,082,000 thousand there for the 22. Then you saw an increase of almost $1.8 billion for 2023. I just wanted to know how much of that was for revaluation and how much new property value for fiscal '23, and do you have a projection for fiscal '24 of new property value?
I would like to get back to you with a concrete number and after talking to the tax assessor on that, but just speaking on reval looks at all residential properties, whether it be commercial and real estate, so that would be the top numbers there. The 5 billion going to 6.8 billion, that was as a result of the reval, so not tangible property, but everything else gets looked at during a full reval like that, so but again, some of that is gonna be growth. There is growth in there as well, so that isn't all reval, but the bulk of it is, and that's where I'd like to talk to the assessor, and I can get you a concrete number on that.
Yeah, I just heard that the reval maybe increased things by 20%, 22%, but I didn't know what the increase of new value of homes,
Yeah, that's
remodeling, et cetera, were in fiscal '23, and maybe a projection for the 8 months so far in fiscal '24.
I will definitely get back to you on that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And just listening to Mr. Manny earlier, my other better half of the family has worked with development offices all her life, and finding good grant writers only matches finding good grant finders. And as you found out, there are opportunities out there. So again, there's some areas where sometimes spending money is well worth the return. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else in the audience wish to come on up? One last time? Okay, we're going to move on. All right. Any discussion on this budget before we consider? This is a preliminary budget adoption, so this is not final adoption. Final adoption takes place in late April, but if we have any initial thoughts, concerns, I think Jim's done a good job with this budget. He's kept it lean. We know what the increase is mostly made up, the new police contract, and we know that that was a good thing. It's good for morale. It's good for keeping everyone happy, keeping everyone motivated to work, and it's going to be less turnover as a result, and there'll be less overtime as a result of that contract, which is huge. So I feel good about this budget, but any other thoughts?
I just wanted to thank Jim and all the town staff members for all their work on this. I know you guys have been putting in major overtime hours and probably missing out on family and friends and all that good stuff. So you're appreciated. Thank you. This budget looks great. I think it's the best that we could have hoped for.
So people might not realize, Jim, that you've only been here 10 or 11 months. Brian's been here maybe 9 months. July, right? I think you came.
July, yes.
July. So I just want to recognize as well, you always come, Jim, with creative solutions. You're always looking for the best bottom line for the community. If people don't come when we purchase a truck, Jim always says, I go out and look at every vehicle before we buy a new vehicle. It's really reassuring that you live here and that you work hard for all of us. Really, it's great, and you've built a team of people that work tirelessly from Susan on down all the time, work really hard for us and the community. The budget looks really good. For people who might wonder why, we're getting emails about the school budget increase the funding. The school committee asked for this amount. We're giving them what they asked for. It's I think, recognizing long-term decisions need to be made, and so, they seem to be taking a longer view right now, so we should appreciate that. And I am thankful that the increase is very modest. I think it's still very unclear about, where the things might turn left or right with the economy, and so appreciate your hard work, all of you, and the team.
Thank you, Deb. Any other thoughts? All right. Do I hear a motion on this item?
Motion to adopt the preliminary budget fiscal year 23-24.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead, Brian.
I'm sorry, we want to wanted to note, we did have a few of those, proposed changes. I don't know if you need to make those as amendments or.
Oh,
Um,
motion, so we can let it die, or I can,
Yeah, you can just withdraw it and then make it.
I withdraw my motion. Motion to adopt the fiscal year 23-24 town preliminary budget with the adjustments presented tonight.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? None? All right, that passes unanimously. And that's going to bring us to the end.
Motion to
Jim, thank you,
adjourn.
Brian, thank you, Susan, thank you, everyone, for coming.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, this meeting is officially adjourned.